Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from Alabama.
Mr. President, I rise today to pass this legislation by unanimous consent and offer a 2-week continuing resolution so that we can ensure that DHS is fully funded while we continue to negotiate. 2 weeks ago, we agreed to extend funding while we talked and tried to find a pathway forward. However, the timeline we knew was going to be short. It took the Democrats until Saturday evening to actually produce legislative text. Within the next 4 days, we were able to exchange dialogue and text again. You can take a look at what we've seen from the president and his outreach, what you've seen from the Secretary of Homeland Security and the deployment of body cameras across the country, and what we've heard from Tom Homan today. We are working in good faith to find a pathway forward. What we're asking is, let us continue to do that. We're asking today for the exact same thing that we had 2 weeks ago, extend this funding for 2 more weeks so that as we talk, that as we negotiate, TSA agents don't miss a paycheck, so that FEMA workers who are helping to get out disaster relief to people who have been ravished across this country, in particular in the South, just in the last few weeks. We lost over 60 individuals to the deadly winter storms. There are people who need help. And the people who are working to provide that help for them, Mr. President, they deserve a paycheck. When we're looking at CBP and ICE continuing to do their work, look at what's happening across the country. It's important that we stand shoulder to shoulder with our law enforcement officers, allowing them to make sure that they keep themselves safe and the communities at large. There are very important jobs that they have, like HSI agents that go after child pornographers and drug traffickers, that make sure that Americans are safe, Mr. President. HSI has done tremendous work and must be continued to be funded. You look at Secret Service, the list goes on and on and on. Secret Service continues to protect not only Americans' leaders, but it makes sure that when we have events like the World Cup, Olympics, that Americans and those who are visiting here are safe and secure. It's clear we are operating in good faith. We are working to find a pathway forward. And the fact that people, these employees, people who have stepped up to serve their country are not going to receive a paycheck, to me is just totally, completely unacceptable, Mr. President. Look, we don't have to go down another government shutdown pathway, and that's exactly what this is. By not allowing us time to continue these conversations and shutting the government down, real people will pay the price. These same workers, these same agents who went without a paycheck for 43 days because of the failure of the Democrats to come to the table then. It's exactly what we're seeing now, Mr. President. It's a choice. It's entirely up to Senate Democrats. We stand here today to say we are operating in good faith. We have continued to move the ball forward. Let's keep talking. Let's keep working. Let's do a 2-week extension. Don't let anyone miss a paycheck. Let's make sure that we keep Americans safe coast to coast. I hope they will make the right choice, but that's entirely up to them, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of calendar number 156, H.R. 4553, and I further ask that the Britt substitute amendment at the desk be considered and agreed to, and that the bill as amended be considered read a 3rd time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from Connecticut.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object. I think our caucus was confused and frustrated by how long it took for our Republican colleagues to come to the table and start discussions. The minute that we passed a 2-week continuing resolution for the Department of Homeland Security, we knew we were going to have to enter into some hard discussions about how we can rein in ICE's lawlessness, which is what the American people demand. And yet, during the first week of that 2-week continuing resolution, there was no clarity over who we were supposed to be negotiating with. Was it Senate Republicans? Was it the White House? And in fact, it wasn't until last night literally on the verge of the shutdown, that we got our first offer of text from the White House. Far too late to be able to engage in any compromise before the deadline. So I wish we weren't here. I wish our Republican colleagues in the White House had shown more seriousness from the start. But Senate Democrats have been clear that we have all taken an oath to uphold the law of the country. And this Department of Homeland Security, this ICE, is out of control. They are tear gassing our children's schools. They are killing American citizens. They are disappearing legal migrants. I went down to Texas a couple weeks ago and sat across a table from 2 elementary school students who had been detained illegally for 6 weeks over Christmas while their mother was at home. It was a choice ICE made to traumatize and terrorize these children. Those children were alive on the outside, but dead on the inside. So, yes, we believe we have a constitutional obligation to only fund a Department of Homeland Security that is obeying the law. And this Department of Homeland Security is not obeying the law. So I am hopeful that these discussions will continue. But frankly, we had plenty of time to get a deal in the last 2 weeks. And the lack of seriousness from the White House and from Republicans not getting language until last night has put us in the position we are in today. We want to fund the Department of Homeland Security, but only a department that is obeying the law. And for that reason, I would object.
The objection is heard.
Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from Alabama.
Look, I'm going to say it one more time. We wanted more time. Democrats asked for 2 weeks. Our concern was that 2 weeks wasn't long enough. It took the Democrats a week to articulate what it is they wanted. They articulated it via press conference and via tweet, not by conversation. Let's be clear, not by conversation. Then it took them a number more days from Wednesday to Saturday to come up with legislative text. We then did the same thing, working back and forward. Look, you've seen advancements made from the administration. We saw a big announcement made today by Tom Homan. There is no way that you can't say we're working in good faith. We want to continue this conversation, but yet you're penalizing a TSA agent. A TSA agent is going to go without a paycheck. Why? So that you can posture politically. I'm over it. Everybody on that side of the aisle knows that ICE and CBP will continue to be funded. They're going to continue to enforce the law just as they should. Who's going to pay the price? It's the TSA agent. It's the person working at FEMA who already went 43 days without a paycheck, who's trying to figure out how to make things work. I have reports of TSA agents sleeping in their car because they can't afford gas, selling plasma to make their bills. Guys, come on. We're asking to continue a conversation. When the Biden-Harris failed border policies allowed for millions to come across our border unvetted, when there were American citizens who paid the price in that moment, Mr. President, like Jocelyn Nungary, who was 12 years old and raped and left under a bridge, like Laken Riley, who fought for her life for 17 minutes, Mr. President, before her skull was bashed in. And we kept saying, we've got to do more to secure our border. And our Democratic colleagues said that takes legislation. It can't be done. Well, we know that's not true because all we needed was a new president who secured our border and helps to make our country safe. Look, I believe we are a nation of immigrants. We're also a nation of laws. And the lawlessness has to stop. But even in the midst of all of that, Fentanyl overdoses at an all-time high, Mr. President. We didn't shut the department down. Not one time. And today, Democrats are choosing to shut the department down. We have exchanged texts. That's what you do in a negotiation. You work to find a pathway forward. There was an announcement today that shows we are operating in good faith. I don't know why people who have nothing to do with this are going to have to pay the price for us continuing to work to find a pathway forward. Mr. President, it would be different if we had thrown up our hands and said, nah, we're not going to send you anything back. We want this to work. We believe in our laws, we believe in enforcing them, and we believe in the men and women who do that. And so this is an unfortunate day. It's a sad day. It's certainly not one that had to happen. I want to be very clear. All we're asking for is 2 weeks to continue this conversation, to figure out how to make this work, and to do what's right for all American citizens. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from Connecticut.
Mr. President, I just want to reiterate that we got the language last night. We've been in a 2-week continuing resolution, and last night we got the first offer of legislation from the White House. We're not in charge. The Senate Democrats aren't in charge. We don't run the House. We don't run the White House. We waited for a week for there to be some process to be convened. We got no signal as to what that negotiation would look like, so we finally put our proposals, our text on the table, and didn't get an offer back until last night. My wish is for my Republican colleagues to be just as upset as they are about what is going to happen next week at TSA or at FEMA as for the children that are being traumatized right now in this country, who are being thrown in what's called the baby jail outside of San Antonio, the lives that are fundamentally changed by an immigration policy that is out of control, to have concern for the American citizens who have been killed simply exercising their First Amendment rights, to care about the 4 million Americans who are losing their insurance as we speak because this administration has chosen to put money into a lawless immigration enforcement operation instead of protecting people's health care. That's what's happening in America today. 4 million people are losing their health care insurance. 20 million people are having their rates go through the roof because the priority is flooding Minneapolis with ICE agents chasing down kids at school buses, at school bus stops, as they were doing just 2 days ago in Minneapolis, instead of protecting people's health care. People are losing health care in this country so as to fund this runaway Department of Homeland Security. And so we all have outrage about what is happening in this country today. And I don't know why it took the White House until last night to send any semblance of specifics on what they were willing to work for. We have an obligation as members of Congress to fund a government that obeys the law. This Department of Homeland Security is not obeying the law. They are not. And I would argue that every member of this body, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, in order to uphold your oath of office, should not be funding an agency that isn't complying with the Constitution and the statutes of the United States. So I do regret that we are at a moment in which we are not going to be able to fund the Department of Homeland Security. But there's a simple solution. If the agency starts behaving lawfully, if they start obeying the Constitution, then we can get back on the same page. This is an exceptional moment in this country's history. And my hope is that these negotiations move fast, expeditiously, and that perhaps as soon as we return, or if the majority leader would like to call us back into session next week, we can get the department back up and operating. But that's only going to happen with reforms. That's only going to happen with more serious engagement from the White House than has happened thus far.
Mr. President.
Senator from Alabama.
I think that these children do matter. And I think the 500,000 unaccompanied kids that came across the border during the Biden-Harris administration matter too. Many of them with phone numbers, safety pinned to them or written on their arm. The Biden-Harris administration got rid of the DNA policy to make sure that these kids were going to family members. These kids were lost. Many of them still are. What we heard Tom Homan say today, the day we're voting to say, can we continue this conversation? Can a TSA officer still get a paycheck while we talk? Is he said that there was a significant drawdown there in Minnesota. He said operations were successful and that 3,000 kids who had been lost had been found. Now, I remember coming down here and talking about that. I remember talking about these kids that had wandered across the border. But we deserve better. America deserves better. These kids deserve better. And this is really simple. Are we negotiating in good faith? If it takes you over 8 days to get us legislative text, and we're able to turn that around in a couple of days, you have an announcement like you have today, it's clear that we are. And so why you're making people pay the price like a TSA officer to go without pay again is beyond me, Mr. President. I yield the floor.